show. And so everyone has a family, no matter what consensus you think of it as. It could be friends, it could be actual blood relations, but everyone has people that they feel close with. But the real question that we're hoping to discuss today is, how do these complex familial relations impact our respective realities and truly shape our identities throughout our lives?
One of you mentioned earlier having interdependence between relationships, but that's a very thin line, because once you start getting into codependence, then you can start getting into toxic family relations. And then, as has been quite evident in this book, incest. There could be cases of incest. So when we talk about familial relationships, we also have to talk about unhealthy familial relationships that, turn into something that's grotesque and, not fun to talk about or, hear about or anything.
It seems like a pretty desperate search for love when you
Yeah.
have to
Turn
get
to your family.
in your family.
I think it's interesting to think about, because like in our modern day society, like incest is such like a taboo topic, and like isn't it like illegal in the United States everywhere but Alabama?
Probably.
But it's interesting to think about the origins, because I do recall like from history classes that it was completely socially acceptable and even encouraged in the past. And I remember in like terms of royal families especially, like they were trying to preserve the bloodline, and they didn't want like outsiders coming in, and they just wanted to like continue those traits and that tradition of like royal blood. But I think the most important thing to think about with that is the fact that, I mean, with science, we've learned that genetic mutation is so much more likely to occur. Like, that's probably why it's legal everywhere, because of the fact that we can have birth defects and things like that. But
I mean,
I guess,
look at the king and the queen. It was Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. They were like cousins or something.
yeah. I mean, I guess the real question is, like,
And
why
then
do
look at all
people
their
still
teeth.
do it? Their teeth.
Oh, British people got crazy teeth. It's because there was so much incest in Britain.
I feel like part of the reason with that is probably just because we form, like, the strongest bonds with people that we spend the most time with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we're, like, that comfortable with people, I guess I think you were mentioning earlier, like, the Oedipus complex,
Oedipus
right?
and the Electra complex. Oedipus was Freudian. Electra was not Freudian, but the whole thing is that, like, you're attracted to your parents. Oedipus, it comes from Greek literature, I believe. But the Oedipus complex is basically you're in love with your mom, you hate your dad, you're trying to get with your mom the entire time. Incest. Electra complex that's Oedipus is for boys, Electra is for girls. So Oedipus is you're super into your dad, you don't like your mom, it's jealousy and whatnot. Which is really weird to think about, because, when you think about your parents, you're not thinking about that at all. I guess underneath, if Freud was right, which, he's not always, underneath all of, like, our psychology and everything and, like, subconscious mind, we are attracted to our parents. So that begs the question, is incest natural?
It's so weird.
Maybe they feel comfortable, they feel like nurtured around like a person similar to their mom.
I think someone told me something about that, like everyone, like their first love is basically like their like opposite sex parent, and I think that's kind of just because maybe like they give off like the impression of a role model, and like you have like respect them and things like that. But that's so interesting, because especially I feel like in familial relationships, like say like your dad was like abusive or like a bad parent or something, like would you still like continue that chain and like look for people with those traits?
So, because I feel like a lot of
Subconsciously,
people,
probably.
a lot of people that like experience those like they're in those abusive relationships, like I feel like they're more prone to seeking toxic people.
Yeah, and it's easy to like say just break the cycle and like stop like looking for people with those traits, but I feel like it's easier said than done in those cases, because the cycle does like usually unfortunately continue.
Yeah, but just to connect that to the book, because we must, I would say that with Aureliano and Amaranta, did I say that right?
I think so. I don't really know.
Yeah.
Their relationship becomes incestuous. They don't have sex, but
They don't.
Some
For
weird
now.
stuff happens.
Yes, she's still pretty much his mother figure.
Yeah.
Step siblings, yeah, like
Which
where
is
people like
kind of weird.
end up like
still.
going out or like dating like their step siblings. And is that any better? I guess that's kind of like the question of like nature versus nurture. Like I feel like your kid is still just as much your kid if you raise them as your kid, like if they are a stepchild or if they are like a half sibling or something like that. So is it still like, how is incest characterized? Is it by exactly blood or by being raised with them?
Rebecca, she marries
Her stepbrother.
So I mean, not technically incest, but they grew up together.
Yeah, it was still frowned upon by Ursula and...
I was gonna say, why were they kicked out of the house? But I mean, I guess they don't know about Aureliano and
Ursula
Amaranta.
almost caught Amaranta and Aureliano, but
Oh yeah.
they got away with it. And then she cut him off right away.
Yeah.
So she definitely felt
So
that
she
pressure.
knows what would happen.
Yeah, she felt that pressure, and she knew deep down it was pretty.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
It was a little wrong.
Didn't that happen with Jose Arcadio and Pilar, whatever her name is? That's his birth mother, right? And he was like trying to
Oh yes,
like
he was
get her
trying
to
have
sleep
sex
with
his
him.
mother.
Yes.
And so she was like no, and she had to pay
She
like
paid
some
someone
other
else to
woman
visit
to
him.
pretend
Yes.
to be her.
Also, Jab and Ursula.
Yes.
They were cousins.
Oh,
They are first
interesting.
cousins.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
So a lot
So
of
many
incest.
instances of incest.